Beef Market Update with Ann Wasco on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Haney Farms.
It's time for another Beef Market Update with Ann Wasco of Gateway Livestock. And Ann, I know you've been busy haying. How are things coming along in the field in your part of Saskatchewan there?
Well, of course, as you know, Calvin, we're in that deep southwest corner of the province, which has been very dry, and we did get a little shot of moisture this week, but haying for most of us has gone very quickly because there's been absolutely no weather impacts, and crops or the hay crop certainly isn't overly abundant, but we are still certainly relying on last year's reserves that got it going, but things certainly drying up now.
Okay. Do you see this having an impact, before we get to some of the other things we want to talk about here, do you see that having an impact on when we see animals come to market?
Well, it certainly could in certain areas, and Sean and I talked about that a couple weeks ago, and things are still pretty quiet still on the runs as we speak. But I think as we get closer to flipping the calendar into the 1st of August, you're going to start to see that change and some offerings start to pick up in these areas that are running out of pasture land and water concerns and all that kind of thing, the things that are going on as we speak. The
dryness-related stuff that I think, it's certainly devastating. I think we're also getting tired of talking about it.
Yeah, and unfortunately that's but then the other side of it is you don't have to travel too far, and that's one thing that's good about traveling. You certainly can get into areas not too far from the southern part of our two provinces that are in much better shape. So that's good.
Yeah. What have we seen in the cash market when it comes to Western Canada here in the past weekend?
Well, this week, some good news coming out of the U.S., which kind of hopefully sets the tone for us here in Western Canada. But after coming off pretty good for the last several weeks, they did claw back $2 to $3 U.S. and trading kind of in that southern Texas, Kansas areas at 120. So that's good news. Now, locally, the market in Alberta on fed cattle lost more than $7 live last week. So that and there's been no trade yet this week, so that kind of drops it down into the low 140. So pretty significant reduction from where we'd even been on the 1st of May, let alone the 1st of June. So one of the things that certainly we've even seen a bigger impact, well, two things, I guess, Calvin, especially after yesterday's interest rate announcement, we've seen the appreciation of the Canadian dollar, which has a negative influence on cattle prices. That's one thing. And then secondly, we've got a basis shift going on, and it's happened in the U.S. and it's also happening here. And simply put, that's just meaning that instead of being a premium, our cash cattle prices trading above the U.S. Equivalent market, we've now dropped down to below, and well below what we would have been even at this time last year. So, for example, last week we were $9.100 below the U.S. market in Canadian dollars. So we've gone from one extreme to the other. So that kind of quote quietly happens, but at the same time, it's real money that's now gone.
So in light of this weakness, then, Ann, what kind of position does this leave cattle feeders in as we get into the fall run?
Well, good question, Calvin, and that's kind of what's on everybody's minds as we head into the second half of the year, and we've got our yearling run, especially in these areas that are dry. It's going to be starting to happen pretty quickly, and the calves won't be far behind them. So, what's going to happen? And I think certainly looking at how cattle feeders have come, so far into 2017, they've had a great year from a profitability perspective. If they're on the cash market, it's been a great year for them, better than many of us were certainly expecting. So that's going to augur well for support. Even though cattle prices are coming down and the Canadian dollar is coming up and lots of question marks around what feed prices are going to be this fall, certainly that will be supportive. But I think it's going to be important for those of us selling feeder cattle and calves in this market to remember that this market is adjusting pretty significantly. And I think one thing that's pretty clear, if you go back to last fall and, as lower than we thought last fall, this spring higher than we thought, and as we go into the fall of 2017, I think we have to be prepared for still some pretty violent moves that might catch us off guard and surprise. That's without even talking about outside influences or outside factors. So I think certainly we've got some support. Cattle feeders have been profitable, and history tells us that's usually been a good thing.
Okay. We continue to inch closer to the NAFTA renegotiations, and we saw Mexico's Ag Secretary together with Canada's Ag Minister at the Calgary Stampede this week, where I'm sure they were talking about some of their NAFTA positions there. On the trade front, we've seen some pretty good numbers now for the month of May.
Yeah, no, we've had a great month, and you're right. We're talking and watching closely, and this is why it's an important part of our business. More than half of our beef and cattle equivalents, and if you're in the pork industry, well more than half heads to outside markets. So where we've been in 2017 has been pretty remarkable. May itself was a 10% increase from May of 2016, and year to date for 2017 over 2016 we're up 3%. And 2016, just to remind you, was the best we'd had since 2010. So it looks like we're on track to beat it. To the U.S., we're still down 4%. So this has not been a U.S.-led trade market for Canada. Japan's been a key factor in what's happened here in 2017. In May, our beef trade to Japan was up 24%. Year to date, we're up 35% to Japan. Again, a real clear reminder. Even we've got NAFTA going on in one segment of discussions, and then are we going to be able to have a TPP minus the U.S. kind of discussions going on over here? And this data reminds you just how important those Asian markets are for us here in Canada, whether we're on the beef or pork side. And then finally, China, Hong Kong up 7% in May. Year to date, we're up 6% there, and Mexico up 16% year to date for beef trade to Mexico. So we're off to 5 months under the belt for data, and we're off to a great start for this year.
So what is it that's making Canadian exports so competitive that we are ahead of last year, so far ahead?
Well, I think certainly value, compared to where we were priced at in late 15 and early 16, the price of beef at a wholesale level is a better value. And again, with exchange rates also playing a factor into that. So I think that's where I'd kind of mark the two specific keys there. But again, the markets that we're going into are growing markets overall that, the expectations, they will continue to demand more protein and more beef from all countries. And we just got to make sure Canada's on that list and at the front of the line.
All right. Well, good to catch up again, Ann. Have a good weekend. All the best with haying, and I guess hope you get some rain.
Yes, me too. So thanks for that, and same to you, Calvin.